Righto.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Oh, can you actually see if there's anyone here apart from us as yet, Wayne?
Yeah, 6.
Ah, welcome. This is exciting. I'm very happy to have you here. We're going to run things similar to how we did at all of the other sessions where people came by in person, just we'll all be online, and there will be the ability for you to ask a load of questions as well. So what we've done at the start of each of the other sessions is just give a bit of a lay of the land, whereby I have made a short video to introduce you to each of the topics. And hopefully our technical expert Wayne will be able to play the video for you to watch. It takes 3 or 4 minutes, and then we'll come back and have a bit of a chat. Fire away, Wayne.
I've got no sound.
I think we are working on that. So we might put a pause on that at the moment while we try and figure out what to do with our sound on the video. So I guess the reality is I can talk you through it, and then you can go back and watch it later. There's plenty of links out there, including on the council website page. But basically the video is a bit of an introduction, and we're going to go a little bit deeper into each of those topics anyway. So Wayne, is it all good if I carry on as this?
Yeah.
Perfect. Great. So we have got 9 topics in this consultation, but of course you can submit on anything that relates to council operations. If you've got a great idea, if there's something that you would like to see put in the long-term plan out to years 7, 8, 9, this is the time that you raise it with us and get it on the radar, especially if it's something new that you think that the district should have, or if it's a level of service cut that you think that we should be looking at into the future. And throwing one out there could be, actually, we don't think that councils should run any public swimming pools and we should close them all. If you wanted to see that happen, now would be the time to let us know in the long-term plan, so that that would be something that we could think about into the future. The first topic up in the consultation document is water. So you will have probably had just about a guts full of water. I know that it has certainly been on our radar as elected members for many years now, as I'm sure Tracy will agree. Pretty much water has occupied the vast majority of our time over the last 5 years. First with the Labor government's water reform that started out as an opt-in, opt-out process and then became a mandatory process, and then saw them lose, I guess, control of the country in the elections, and issued in a new government. This government too has water reform in their sights. They're doing things a little bit differently, in that it is being left up to local councils and territorial authorities to determine what is the best path forward for each council. Now for us, we have got a huge amount of water infrastructure servicing lots of our smaller communities. So instead of Invercargill, who has kind of one big plant that services their whole town, which would be, well, their whole city really, which would be nice, we have got sort of 7, 8, and in some cases 9 small water and wastewater treatment plants. Now that presents a lot of challenges for us, especially with the new regulations. So one of the things that this government has done is bring in a new plan for water, but not a reduced plan for regulations. There's still going to be a huge amount of onus on councils. It's basically taking out any risk when it comes to drinking water. So previously, you might have been able to say, oh, look, our communities are pretty happy with our water the way it is. We're just going to treat it with a bit of chlorine and everybody's happy. From now, you won't be able to do that. You're going to have to meet the drinking water standards. We have got a couple of our plants that meet the drinking water standards, including the big new one on the Clyde Hill that services Clyde and Alexandra. But a number of our other smaller schemes don't even meet the protozoa barrier requirements. So they do require quite a lot of upgrades. We also require a substantial amount of investment and upgrades in our wastewater treatment plants, which is the lovely poo ponds that you see when you come in and out of our towns, depending on where you are. The previous government had said that there was only going to be discharge to land. We have got a number of plants, including Alexandra's plant and Cromwell, who discharge to water. And we thought we were going to have to move all of those and discharge to land. One of the things that the new government has done is talk to the water regulator, Taumata Arawai, which some of you may know is where our friend Tim Cadogan is now working. And they are looking at wastewater standards. And the idea being, around the country, standards would be standardised so that regardless of whether you're in the Waikato or in Central Otago, so long as you met the standards, then you were fine to continue discharging into water. That is out for consultation with them currently, but it does mean that there are still some unanswered questions for us. Possibly we won't need to move Alexandra and Cromwell plants, but we do still need to have a conversation about the plant at Omako, because that is in a floodplain and has of course had water over the top of the ponds twice in the last 5 years, which is definitely not what we want to be a part of going forward into the future. We need to come up with a resilience plan for that treatment plant. So the first question that we are asking in the consultation document is, do you want to see water services moved into a council-controlled organisation or not, is effectively the question. Now, one of the things that we have done in the meantime is Central Otago has signed up to a memorandum with Clutha District Council, Gore District and Waitaki District to say the four of us want to look at what options might look like for a joint CCO. We know there are a lot of benefits that come from scale, including standardised treatment plants and the ability to procure bigger contracts. But then there are some negatives that come with a bigger sized CCO as well. The important thing about a CCO is that it is not privatised. It is still owned by the council. So each council would have an equal share in the company that oversees our water and wastewater, and in some cases, stormwater as well. We do think that there are financial savings and efficiencies that can be made with this model, but we do have to ask you about it. The tricky thing with this is, because we love consultations, as you're probably well aware, we have got another consultation coming out about water following from this one. Water is such a huge beast, we could not cover it all in one question. But the auditors who looked over our consultation document did say, look, you're going to have a question about water in there. So that's the kind of Billy basic question we're asking you up front. In-house option or a CCO option. Our preference is for a CCO, but we would like to hear from you. And then coming towards the middle of May, there'll be another document coming out, and that'll cover all the things like, what does a CCO cost? How would it be made up? How would it be run? Who would oversee it? And then what are the implications for us working together with those three other councils? Now, you may have heard that Timaru had considered being a part of that as well at one point. They have currently pulled out to work on getting a deal over the line with their neighbours, Mackenzie and Waimate district councils, but they are working alongside us, with the idea being that down the track, it may well be that we could quite easily join and make 7. There was, of course, the enthusiasm from the previous government to have a whole of South Island CCO, but that makes it difficult to ensure places like Terrace and Pariaroa and Naseby are going to get the services that they require. So this is probably a pretty good intermediate step. You get the efficiencies that come with scale, but also the local knowledge and control over what money gets spent where, and a bit of direction for the council controlled organisation. Tracy, I just wondered if there was anything you wanted to add into that at this point.
No, other than the fact that, and I think you've put that quite well, Tamer, is that we, just to reiterate what you said in relation to the people being over-engaged, and we really need people to not only get on board with the LTP, which is what we're doing now, but we also need to hear in relation to water, because it is going to affect everybody. So it's really important. It is a little bit of a pain that it can't be up together, but it's for very good reasons. So yeah, thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Tracy. The other question that we wanted to ask is about volumetric water charges. So for the last 10, 12 years, we've had water meters, and because we've had water meters, we've had volumetric charges. So you pay a fixed charge to be connected to water, and then a volumetric charge depending on how much water you use. Now, in those sort of 12, 14 years, it's gone up by 10 cents over that whole time, from 50 cents to 60 cents per cubic metre. And we want to talk to you about whether we should raise that to $1.80 or $2.40, or leave it the same. Now, there are a couple of benefits that come with raising it. So one being, if we raised it to $2.40 a cubic metre, it would mean that the fixed charge you pay just for the privilege of being connected to the water would come down by roughly $300. That would enable those people who are on lower incomes to have about a $300 savings on their water bill, which is kind of together with your rates. Your fixed charge is added to your rates, and then your volumetric charge comes on your water bill. And for most of our ratepayers, good 50% of them, they are using less than 224 cubic metres of water a year. We then have some very high users, and in fact 8% of our water users are using 42% of our treated water. Council is one of those large users, and that is because we're using town treated water to water the Big Fruit Reserve at Cromwell. It's not a great use of water that's treated for drinking, although I guess you could fill up your drink bottle from the irrigation there if you needed to. We are going to be looking at alternative options so that we're not treating water to then pour it on the ground. And now this one's creating quite a lot of heat, because a lot of people who have large gardens or use a lot of water on their properties are thinking, well, that doesn't seem fair. But we think that this is a fairer way to do it, because it means that large water users are not being subsidised by lower water users. So there's a couple of in-betweens, and what I've done is I've gone around the country, courtesy of Google, and come up with what some other people are paying in areas that are similar to us, because there is a huge variety in our country about how much people are paying for water. So in Whangarei, people are paying $3.38 a cubic metre, and these are just based on their last long-term plans that I found. So $3.38 in Whangarei, $1.35 a cubic metre in Christchurch, $3.54 in Palmerston North, $3.56 in Tasman, $1.02 in Timaru, and $2.36 in the Waikato. Now, obviously, some places receive more water than others. In Central Otago, despite the fact that we're one of the driest places in New Zealand, we are not great at saving water. We used to be, and then over time, I think probably because our water rates have been so cheap, people have become a bit lax about it. If you are growing a really lush, amazing garden in your in the back of your house, or you've got a beautiful big veggie garden where you're helping out the neighbours, that is awesome. The reality will be that if you're using a large amount of water, you would end up paying more. Now, there is a kind of a glass half full, glass half empty kind of analogy to that. And a big part of it is that because we are growing so fast, there are some real challenges around the infrastructure and making sure we've got the right size pipes and everything in the ground. There are a lot of upgrades that we need to do to make sure we've got the capacity for all of the people that are in Cromwell, Alexandra, right out to the Maniatoto, down to Roxburgh. And if we can reduce the amount of water that people are using by a bit, it'll mean we can push out some of those large infrastructure projects and save on having to spend all of that money up front right now. Moving on to our next couple of topics. Water everywhere, but not the kind that you can drink. Tracy, is there something that you wanted to cover off on that?
Yeah, just sorry, in relation to the volumetric charges, just like to point out that there is a calculator online, so people can use their bill, their current bill, their last bill, to actually to have a look at what the estimate would be. So I think the whole intention of this is that there was going to be very little change to what you pay in water, but as Tame has already pointed out, it's the people who aren't using as much are going to be they're not going to be subsidising other users that are using a significant amount of water. So that's just one concept.
Thank you. Now, when we were looking at what the rates rises were going to be, we said to the staff, can you please go away and come back with some ways that we can save money? So we did that, and it was not particularly well received, because some of the places where we can save money are some of the things that people really enjoy about living here. So the first one that came up was the Alexandra outdoor pool. Now, when the previous Centennial Baths down at Linga and Dye was closed in the early 2000s, and a new facility built up at Molyneux Park, they put in an outdoor pool because people had loved swimming outdoors in the old one. It hasn't been that well utilised over the last few years, and the use has been declining. Now, some of that, people are saying, is because there's not enough staff there, and often it's not open. Some of it is because on a beautiful hot sunny day, people prefer to go to the lake or the river. And that's one area where we could save money. It would save us around about $200,000 a year, which is the operating costs of the pool, including staffing it for the summer months. And there is a few people have sort of said, oh, but the pool looks really nice. It's not at the end of life. The pool does look nice. The equipment that's at the end of the life is the plant that's used to run the pool. It also costs about $10,000 a month to heat the pool if you wanted it to be heated up a little bit over the summer months. People really seem to enjoy that when David turned it on momentarily last summer, but then that heating system had a bit of a malfunction and it went off again. So we are trying to come up with a solution in the middle. The challenge being, we can't just close the pool for a couple of seasons and see how it goes. It would need to be decommissioned and filled in, and then something else done with that land if we were going to close it. We've already received quite a lot of submissions in relation to this. Please do keep them coming, because this is something that we really want to hear from the people who use it. The other pool that we're talking about is the Roxburgh Pool, which is an award-winning, architecturally designed, beautiful facility built by a community volunteer trust down in the Teviot Valley. Now, the challenge for that trust is they built a pool, they gathered all the funds, they did a whole heap of fundraising and applied for a lot of grants. The reality is they never intended to run a pool. It is incredibly difficult to run a pool. It also comes with a huge amount of liability for the volunteer trustees that in reality they just don't want to carry, and I can completely understand that. So the trust who own the Roxburgh Pool have approached council to say, would you be able to take it over and run it in a similar way to the Ranfurly Pool? So we're coming out to the community to ask you about that. It doesn't make a huge difference to anybody outside of Roxburgh if we take over that extra pool. We already districtise the pool costs, so everybody who has access to a public pool pays the same, but it does have a big financial implication for the people in the Teviot Valley, who would then be paying around about $250 for that additional pool to come into the mix. The good thing would be that if you were under 18, you would be able to swim there. At the moment, the way the pool operates is if you're under 18, you need to have an adult or guardian with you at all times, because it is not staffed by qualified lifeguards. Before we move into halls and facilities, I can just see that a comment has come up in the chat to just figure out. A question has come in, and we'll cover these as we go in case they disappear in the chat. Is the proposed council-controlled organisation going to have sub-branches addressing or servicing infrastructure in each individual council area? So the answer to that is that the council-controlled organisation would be overseen by a board of directors. They would be appointed on a competency and skills basis, And how they would be appointed would be up to the 4 councils, or if we collected any more councils, the extra ones, to decide. So it could be anything from you all get together as a panel and then decide who's going to be on the board, or it could be each council chooses one person. The key thing being that we would be having people with specialist skills on that board. Councils would also set the statement of expectation for the council controlled organisation, which might say things like how much weighting was given to growth, how much weighting was given to infrastructure repairs or upgrades, so that it could be weighed up on a really fair basis, so we can make sure that whether it's Oamaru Town Supply versus Patearoa Rural Supply versus Cromwell's upgrade, who is first cab off the rank. One of the good things about putting it into a CCO that some people might not think is a good thing is to take that kind of politics aspect out of water, and it would be on a needs basis assessed by an expert panel rather than which community is making the most noise about a particular issue in their area. So it does make it a bit fairer, especially for some of those smaller areas. So hopefully that answers that question, and if you want a bit more of a follow-up, do pop it in to Wayne in the Q&A. Halls and public facilities. Wow, this has been a huge one. Again, in the interests of being fair and transparent, we have put pretty much all of the halls and public facilities that council owns into the mix as a potential divestment option. And despite a huge amount of debate around the different community board tables and some community boards wanting to see more priority given to others, they did actually agree that everything should be in the mix so that we can hear from the public. We've already had a huge show of support for a number of our facilities, and also a show of support for some of the things that we're thinking about getting rid of, including the Riding for Disabled building, which is the old one by the golf course. So it's not the building that they currently use, it's the old one, the cinder block one by the golf course that has no power, no running water, and actually is not currently being used for anyone. So I just didn't want you to think that we were kicking the RDA out of their home to demolish their building. They have been moved somewhere much nicer down the road. This is another one where we potentially have the ability to save a little bit of money in the short term and maybe a lot of money in the long term. A large amount of our buildings were built 60, 70, 80 years ago, and they need a huge amount of earthquake strengthening, potentially, upgrades. Some of the buildings have been upgraded by the community along the way, who fundraised themselves to put in things like heat pumps or upgraded toilet blocks. So we really want to hear from our communities. There are a huge amount of facilities in Vincent and the Maniatoto, not as many in Cromwell and the Teviot. But it's important that people let us know what they use these buildings for. If they are the life and soul of your community and it's actually the only meeting place you have and you really want to see it retained, then do tell us. I know we put everything on the divestment list, but we fully expect there to be some facilities that will probably come back in. We just want to make sure they're the right ones in the right place for the right people that are going to be utilised well into the future. Some of them have got sentimental value, but maybe not necessarily a lot of practical value anymore. So we want to hear a bit more on those as well. Tracy, I wondered if you wanted to cover off a bit of that, given how many are in the Vincent ward.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of passion around the whole district, actually, in relation to the halls. I guess the big thing for anyone who's listening online, it's really important to realise that we've prepared the long-term plan, the budgetary side of things, on the basis of divestment, because the community very loudly during the last LTP, and obviously during the last striking of the rates, they said, can you please look long and hard at what you're doing? So that's what we've done. And one of the things that we've needed to do is look at the halls. And obviously there's no decisions made until we have all the feedback from the community. So at that point, depending on what the community tells us and how the decision around the table goes, there's potentially an implication on the rates, what what that is going to look like, and there'll be pluses and minuses as we work through the process. But in relation to halls, we certainly have had a lot of people be very passionate about it. So it's great to see so many people engaged, and I hope that continues.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tracy. And a follow-up question to that CCO was, would there be a single team or contractor employed by the CCO to oversee the entire system, which does not seem practical? Well, no, it might not be practical to do it that way. It would be the responsibility of the CCO and their board of directors to determine how services would be delivered in each area. We would fully anticipate that they would need staff in each place to oversee the systems. There's quite a lot of work in it. You couldn't just send someone from Christchurch or Timaru or Oamaru each time. And we don't yet know what that might look like, whether there would be some sort of headquarters building whereby the main team work from and they have people embedded in each council, but we do fully anticipate that there would be people in each area. The setup costs for a CCO have been estimated at around $13.4 million to establish the CCO, and that 13.4 would be shared between the 4 councils. And also any other councils that might come in along the way. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an idea. But yeah, it would be the directors of the company, their job to ensure that services were being delivered where they needed to be. Last couple of topics that we have got is 2 turfs. Now, sport is super important to young people and old in Central Otago, and we certainly punch well above our weight when it comes to representative sport, including in the likes of hockey, netball, rugby, rowing, all sorts. It's pretty great to come from Central Otago and be so well represented by our young folk especially. The 2 turfs that are proposed are both on Ministry of Education land. So one is at Dunstan High School, opposite and behind the kind of Molyneux Stadium building on the old basketball court, and the other one is an upgrade of the existing turf at the Maniatoto Area School. Now, some people will say, well, why doesn't the Ministry of Education just pay for it? And I would suggest that because most schools are struggling to get the additional classrooms that they need out of the ministry, the chances of them getting a new turf are pretty slim. So there are 2 organisations, one being the Molyneux Turf Incorporated and the other one being the school, and a group of volunteers out in the Maniatoto are doing a huge amount of fundraising and are asking for a contribution from council, not for the full cost of the project. So for the Maniatoto turf, the full cost of the project is estimated to be around $900,000. They are asking for a contribution of $200,000 from council. The facility would be open to the general public outside of school hours. And they will be fundraising the rest, including selling some of the old schoolhouses that they have in the Maniatoto to put that money towards the turf. For the one at Alexandra, it is an estimated project cost of around $1.5 million. They're looking for $300,000 from the council. They will be looking to fundraise and get grants for the rest. And also the Ministry of Education was going to pay to upgrade the concrete facilities at the basketball courts. So instead of paying for the concrete, they have apparently said that they would chip in the equivalent money into a new turf project. They would both be multi-use sports turfs, so they're certainly not hockey specific, and they can be used for all sorts of other activities as well. I think it's really important that this one comes to the community. There have been a couple of questions about, well, why is that cost not spread out over 10 years? Why would you want to pay it all up front? And that is because these grants are classed as an operational cost rather than a capital cost. We don't usually borrow debt to fund operational expenses. It's not necessarily good practice, but it is something that we could look at for these 2 options. So that's why you see those 2 different options in there around how much you pay up front versus how much you pay over 10 years. And then the last thing that I'll cover off, because it is still floating around in the background, is the Supercars event, which has been proposed for Cromwell at the Highlands Motorsport Park. So Supercars is a very large international sports event featuring a number of Kiwi drivers as well. There is not currently a South Island leg to the race. They go to Tapo, motorsport park in the North Island, and that's the only Kiwi place they're currently racing. They do want to come to the South Island. There are 2 racetracks in the mix. One of the things that they look for is a show of support from the local council that yes, that event is wanted in the area, and that's why we have had a look and suggested that $250,000 from the tourism reserves could go towards the supercars event. Now that would be a one-off cost. It certainly wouldn't be an every year type thing. It would very much be a, hey, this would be something that you got for the first year only, and there's certainly no indication that additional money would be needed beyond that. One of the things that they can do is apply to New Zealand major events funding for additional money from the government. So that funds things like the America's Cup race when it comes here. One of the things that New Zealand major event funding look for is support from the local territorial authority, which is council. They will only give money for an event if the local council supports it. Now, you may have seen in the newspaper, Broken by One News, I think it was, that Ruapuna Raceway in Christchurch had been awarded the event for the foreseeable future. We have not had anything from Supercars other than for them to say that's maybe not accurate. They certainly hadn't made any decisions. They've not confirmed a track. So Central Otago is still very much in the running, which is why we would like to hear from you. The reason we're bringing it to you is because it's an event that has the ability to attract a lot of external interest and visitors to our area in a time that is traditionally quite a quiet time for us. So it's that kind of beginning of May when all of the cyclists have disappeared back into their cities and towns around New Zealand, and often we're a bit quieter. The Warbirds over Wanaka event is a similar-ish size and scale that attracts about $40 million to the local economy. And we know that while Cromwell would fill up really quickly, that would flow out, yes, probably through to Queenstown and Wanaka, but it'll also flow right through to the Teviot Valley and out to Ranfurly as well. People stay quite some distance from these events so that they can still travel there each day. So it's something that we do want to talk to our community about there, as the possibility that other events like this might have their eye on us. We're seen as an easy place to come to. We're close to Queenstown. We're easy to access, and also it's a beautiful part of the country that people don't necessarily feel has kind of been there, done that multiple times already. So this is probably the first of potentially a few opportunities for us to look at what not just tourism, but that kind of destination and what we want to be known for in our area and what we bring to the table for beyond wine and cycling. So we do want to hear from you if you think that is money that is well spent, comes from the tourism reserves. So that means that local businesses and commercial entities have put in more money than the ratepayer. So the different tourism rates, depending on if you're a residential house or a commercial operator or a hotel, and those commercial operators and hotels have put more money into that pot. So it's not just coming straight from kind of ma and pa ratepayers' back pocket, the money in that reserves. It can only be used for tourism purposes. So we couldn't say take the money that we had set aside for supercars and use it to keep the Alexandra Pool open instead. And on that, I guess the next stage is, Tracy, anything you want to add? And then we'll open up for some questions. Perfect. And then the last one that I had left off the list was the Manahirikea Valley Community Hub, which, Tracy, I can't believe you didn't highlight that we hadn't said anything about that yet. That is, of course, the new facility that is has been planned for Omako to replace the current rugby club rooms and their old dilapidated town hall, which has now been sold. It's a multi-purpose facility. It has an estimated build cost of around $5 to $6 million. They have done a huge amount of fundraising by the Volunteer Trust to secure the vast majority of those funds. They are looking for a backstop from council of up to $1.6 million so that they can sign the contract and get building. They are not intending to need that whole $1.6 million. They're going to continue fundraising as much as they can until then, but they do need to have all of the funds secured to be able to sign on a contractor. So that is why they are looking for that I guess, guarantee that we will help them out with the rest of that money if need be. Once again, that comes from a reserves account, so it does not impact on the rates rise for people. And when we're talking about the rates rises, I guess it is helpful to note that they are different for each person. And of course, our 13.01% is talking about an average. Now, if you are in town and connected to our services, your average is less this time around. It was more last time, but we've got Cromwell at about 9% average, Alexandra and Clyde at about 8% average, Ranfurly Residential 1% average rates rise. But if you are in the Manahira-Kia Valley on a lifestyle block or a large farm, you're looking at more like 24% rates rise, and that's why those lower numbers in our towns are being pulled up, because the rural sector has been really hammered this time around. Last year, the increase came from the water and wastewater connections, whereas this year it's coming from land values and community facilities. So it's spread, the pie that we collect as rates is spread in a different way. We are working through some alternative ways that we can slice that pie into the future to try and even out some of these massive rise and falls in the rates for especially our rural friends. When you're budgeting for a farm, it's pretty difficult when your rates are going up and down by $20,000 or $30,000 or $40,000 each year. So we would really like to see that smoothed out, and we'll be looking at that in our rating and financial strategies into the future as well. There is a question, what is the community facilities charge that is appearing in estimated rates for next year? So community facilities, now that we have districtised, which is the pretend word that we made up, but I think everybody knows what it means. It means that everybody is paying the same regardless of where you live in the district. That community facilities charge pays for all of the community facilities in the district. Previously, you would have had a charge for the Vincent ward or a charge for the Cromwell ward or wherever you are, whereas now everybody would be paying the same. There's a little bit of an anomaly at the moment because Roxburgh is not currently paying for a swimming pool, but if they do decide that that pool should come into council ownership, then they would be paying the same as everybody else as well. Then we have got some questions on, so the LTP proposed borrowing. So at the moment, we have external debt of around $40 million. We are due to uplift another 10 million in the foreseeable future. Now, all of the debt that we have at the moment is currently linked to capital costs. So we are not, racking up our staff and power bill charges on our credit card. This is just for big capital projects that we're borrowing this money. Proposed borrowing over the course of the long-term plan I think goes out to around about next up to $130 million. And then it will go higher across the length of the LTP, but there may be some differences if we divest or get rid of water to a council controlled organisation, because that would drastically change council's balance sheet. So probably the important thing for this LTP is that the first 2 years are really set in stone, and then beyond that it's kind of a bit of a no man's land depending on what happens with water. So the first 2 years are the really important ones to look at. However, the LTP proposed annual rates increases over the next 5 years. So for the next 2 years, we've managed to get it so it's 10% on average each year. So 13% this year, and then going down to about 8 or 9% next year, I think. And then for the years out beyond that, we're looking at 6 and 5%, I think it is. Sorry, I don't have the sheet in front of me, but it is available online and amongst those additional documents. So it does come down. Those huge increases that we've seen over the last few years are expected to ease. We expect them to ease, and one of the reasons that we are really pushing that is because we are looking for alternative income streams for council that is not just rates. So we own a huge amount of industrial and commercial land. So a big part of that might be our land strategy that the Cromwell Community Board has been looking at. And it possibly is that actually we retain some of that land and start becoming commercial landlords or leasing out land, so that we actually have some additional money coming in from land that we retain rather than a sold and then it's gone. CODC is a member of LGFA Climate Resistance. I can't answer that, I'm sorry. And the mandatory reporting standards at CODC as a member of LGFA. I can't answer those questions. The LGFA are an organisation that provide funding to councils in New Zealand at a cheaper rate than if we went alone to be a bank. We also can loan from them at preferential rates for capital projects, and we also have recently attained an AA credit rating. So in terms of councils' stability and ability to borrow, we're currently rated pretty highly. Some councils have not retained their credit ratings to that extent, and a big part of that is councils who aren't across their water infrastructure and require a huge amount of money to even understand where they are at. Some of the peculiarities around the LGFA are better asked by a specialist, which is not me. Unfortunately, it would need to be Saskia, and she is not able to be here today. But Wayne, if you can collect that person's email, I'm happy to send out that additional information to them, and we can probably post it online as well. Anything you wanted to add to that, Tracy?
No, I think that's fair enough.
Perfect. Some of it, I'm just trying to work across two different screens here. Perfect. Cool. Susie, if you want to check out page 39 of the consultation document, there are some graphs on there that indicate how much debt we are looking to take on, but I think your questions are a bit more specific, so I'll come back to you on those ones. Any other questions? Right, in relation to proposed Alexandra hockey turf, there is a proposed ancillary to the proposed turf. There is a proposed floodlit rugby training area. Is there a specific reason for providing an additional designated rugby training area as opposed to a general floodlit area space for all other sports? I'm guessing probably because, and Tracy, you probably know a wee bit more about this than me, rugby, I don't anticipate they can train on a multi-use turf just because of the hardness of it and the fact that you wouldn't be able to have rugby sprigs on the turf, I wouldn't think. Do you know much about that, Trace?
What I do know is that if they were doing training on there, that would probably be fitness training. I mean, obviously I can't talk to everybody's training schedule, but they would be able to throw the ball around, and in regular shoes, running shoes, they would be able to go on there and utilise that surface, especially when there was a situation where the grounds may be closed because of wet. So that would give them an alternative area to train. And that would be quite beneficial for the rugby players. But yes, they wouldn't be using their sprigs on the turf. That would be a no.
No. And there are some light facilities available on the grass grounds alongside the turf that are used by both rugby and football. And I'm aware they do have some lighting there. I don't think they think it's up to scratch. So it's possibly an upgrade of some of that existing lighting, but would have to double check with Gordy if that is part of our program. Cool. Made a note. We can update that on there in a minute, perhaps. Next question, is it possible to obtain a breakdown of this part of the community facilities charge for the rates? Fundamentally, I'm inquiring how much I'm paying for the Cromwell Hall. The answer is quite a lot. You are paying quite a lot for the Cromwell Hall. The operating costs that will be coming are substantial. Cromwell Community Board and the council are of course paying for the building of the hall. That won't be paid for by ratepayers in the Maniatoda or the Teviot or anywhere else. It'll be built by Cromwell, but we will all be paying for the running of it. It's going to be really important that you book the Cromwell Hall for every possible family reunion and event, because we want it to be utilised as much as possible. It will very much be a district facility. We're just working through what the operational costs of that per year will be, but we can absolutely get a breakdown of that. Some of it is on page 40 of the consultation document, which I'm just pulling up so I can tell you exactly what the numbers are. Although that just has the community and facilities, property and community facilities, works out to be around about $10.54 of every $100 of your rates. But I think the person might be asking to know what that $10.54 is spread across, so we can certainly get a breakdown of that, but it is all council facilities in the area. Oh, any other questions? Well, Neil suggests that we're going to have a Keith Urban concert, but I'm still gunning for Taylor Swift. And failing that, maybe we can find, I don't know, who else would we like to get? Luke Combs. He was a big hit at Eden Park, and I feel like he would be well received in Central Otago, so maybe we should go for that. Neil says Blake Shelton, but I don't know. I think we'd rather Luke Combs, wouldn't we? Now, one of the things that I have done this morning is have a wee look and see how many submissions we have had in so far. If you add together the youth submissions, which is amazing, we have had a response of over 230 youth submissions, which we've targeted at young people aged that sort of 10 to 17 years, or 18 if they don't necessarily want to answer the full submission process. Which is great, 230 super engaged young people. The disappointing somewhat thing is that in total, we are only just at about 500 submissions. Last time we had around 854, which was a standout result for us for a long-term plan. But even that equated to only 3.4 submissions per every 100 residents. So we're certainly well shy of even having 5% of our people come back to us and tell us if this is a good idea, bad idea, or otherwise. It's a challenge. As elected members, we understand that you have elected us there based on whether you think that our values align with your own, and you expect us to make decisions. And we will do that, but we really like to understand the position of the community on some of these really big topics. This government has been really clear that they do not think that the councils should be doing anything other than the very billy basics, which we can do. However, a number of these projects that have come in, including the turfs and the pools, retaining council facilities, are things that our communities love and value and are a reason why people enjoy living here. We could be really hard-nosed and just say, nope, all community facilities are gone, all the pools are gone, the libraries are going to open one day a week out of the back of the bus. But the reality is lots of those sort of nice to haves are the things that make this an enjoyable place to be. So we are aware there are some really big challenges coming, especially in the infrastructure space. We've got 187 bridges in our district. Most of them are poked. A big part of that is because we're quite an old area, and many of our bridges, especially in our rural places, were built for pretty much horse and carts, and now we're asking them to carry a 58-ton fully laden truck and trailer unit. The reality is our infrastructure just can't keep up. We're doing what we can to eke out as much use as we can from our facilities, but lots of our things were built just at that time where there's a general wearing down, and despite maintenance having been done over the years, stuff doesn't last forever. Even in Central Otago, where we don't necessarily have a problem with kind of moss, mold and mildew, which does extend things out, but you know, lots of our facilities need new roofs or new heating. I've had a lot of pushback from some of our I guess, more senior community members around all these nice to haves. And some of my argument to that is, well, when you were a kid, how many local pools did you swim in the winter that were heated? And when you went to the library, did it have a heater and did it have Wi-Fi and was there nice carpet on the floor? And I guess as we've got older and communities have evolved, people's expectations are higher, and rightly so. The place where you would have had your wedding in the 1950s, which might have been the Bex Hall or the Poolburn Hall, that's not cutting it for a lot of young people these days. And same with birthdays and funerals. Schools were a big user of a lot of these facilities, and the way our schools operate has changed now as well. So there is, I think, a bigger conversation to be had around what does council offer? What should we be contributing to? What do people value in our community? What do they want to see retained? And what do they want to see actually just move back into the future, I guess? Yeah. Tracy, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I guess the big thing is that from a councillor level, we have heard what people have asked us to do over the past 12 months. And as we are all ratepayers ourselves, we really do care deeply about what goes on in this community. But I think the most important part is that we need to hear from you guys. If we don't hear, we have to sit around the table and we have to make a decision. And to be honest, those decisions, some people are not going to be happy with. We can't keep everybody happy, but we have to make the best decision with the information that we've got, which means that sometimes those decisions are very, very hard ones. But please be reassured that we actually do care incredibly deeply about the community, and we are trying incredibly hard to make sure that we can do the best. So, yeah, but by all means, and the other thing that is, we have been requested to, and we're going to say it again publicly, is that if you've got anything else that you want to tell us about, request, anything else at the end of the forms, at the end of the online forms and the paper forms, please let us know if you've got any other great ideas, if you want us to address anything else. Please just get in touch with us by that, or you can get in touch with any of the councillors, where all of our contact details are there, or even just ring the main council number and say, I'd like to talk to a councillor, so that we can actually help you out. So yeah, there's lots of avenues. Please make sure that if you need us, you can get in touch.
Perfect. Thank you, Tracy. And I see there is a comment there that could we please have a in-person session in Clyde in the future? And yes, of course we can, and we don't want you to feel left out. And I feel like we can probably make something happen on Monday morning for those people in Clyde who can be somewhere. So I will liaise with MJ from our comms team and source a venue for Monday morning in Clyde and put that out to as many people as possible. So hopefully we can see some of you who haven't been able to attend, or if there's anybody you know who would have liked to have been here tonight but couldn't, we'll make a special in-person session in Clyde Monday morning. Wonderful. And with that, I don't think we have got any more questions at the moment. I'll just double check with Wayne so he can check across our Q&A platform.
No more questions at the moment.
Brilliant. Thank you all for attending. As Tracy said, please do get in touch with us. If you don't like the look of Tracy or I, all of our contact details are on the back page of the consultation document, including our phone numbers and email addresses. So do please feel free to reach out to any of us. We cover the whole area, so you don't have to just pick a councillor from your patch. We are all 100% invested in what's going on right across our district. So we really appreciate your time. We will be pushing really hard for as many submissions as possible over the next week before it closes on the 1st of May. And we look forward to reading more of your thoughts on all of these topics. Right, with that, thank you very much, Wayne. Have a wonderful week, everybody. It's a short week. We will see hopefully many of you at the Anzac services on Friday.